Hey everybody, Jazzy here, and Thursday, November 13th saw the beta release of Hook, Line, and INKER, the third installment of game updates to Don't Starve Together under the theme entitled Return of Them. The first update, Turn of Tides, added oceans, lunar islands, and boats to the game. The second installment, Salty Dog, added some additional ocean mobs, salt formations, new craftables, and of course the Malbatross. Hook, Line, and INKER will be remembered as the big fishing update. We are finally given the tools to go sailing around and fish literally anywhere in the ocean. This update added over a dozen additional ocean mobs, 3 new crockpot recipes, and tons of new craftable items and structures. Most of these new additions are tailored toward the goal of dramatically expanding the fishing experience in DST. And considering how prevalent fishing tends to be in other survival games, I'm so glad to see this mechanic finally taken seriously in my absolute favorite survival game. But a few other non-fishing mechanics have been tweaked, so please stick around to the end because there is a lot to cover today. Let's start with the Sea Fishing Rod, an infinite durability tool that will be your lifeline on the high seas. You can take it as is and start fishing immediately from any shoreline where you spot fish. A seed or berry will be sufficient lure for most of the fish you can expect to find near the mainland. There are currently 5 small ocean fish and 5 medium-sized ocean fish. They spawn in herds which form based on world location. Around the mainland you can expect to find mostly small fish which can be murdered for a fish morsel, except the popper fish which drops popcorn. If you're looking for bigger game, you will need to build a boat and get sailing. The medium fish can be found out in the ocean and can be murdered for fish meat, unless you snag a corn cod, in which case you get fresh corn. Now, I haven't looked too carefully at the spawn locations of different fish herds, but I have noticed a lot of black catfish around the shoals. And the dandelion fish seem to like those darker spots of ocean where you can often find floating boat debris. If you're going for the biggest catch, you'll be doing a bit of lionfish hunting because they're the only fish that could potentially be over 300 pounds. If you let any of these fish die, you get spoiled fish, which can be hammered down for either rot or bone shards. I'd recommend saving one spoiled fish for now, and I'll explain later. Now, after a few casts, you might notice that your reach is less than considerable, you probably have a hard time aiming for the fish, and seeds and berries might not be attracting some of the larger game. This is where the fishing tab comes into play. The tackle receptacle can be prototyped at a science station and is itself a crafting station for a variety of tackles and lures. These cannot be prototyped and so must be crafted at the receptacle. You'll need a spoiled fish to craft the station, so good thing you saved one, right? The spoons and spinner baits are your lure alternative to seeds and berries. The spoons are cheap, but the spinner baits are generally better at attracting larger fish. Both types have 3 different varieties, Sunrise, Dusky, and Night Flyer, and in order to maximize your rod's allure, be sure to use the lure that corresponds to the current phase in the day cycle. And now the tackles are there to improve your fishing rod's performance. Upgrading your tackle will ensure better accuracy and longer range when casting. The wooden bobs are really not that great, and a professional fisherman will eventually want some better gear. In a pinch, a twig as a bobber is better than nothing, and you can actually load up a hardened rubber bung onto the end of your rod for some damn fine range. However, the best tackles are the quill floats, which you can unlock by finding their 6 respective coupons and placing them into your tackle receptacle, basically like you would place sketches into a potter's wheel. All 4 variety of birds have a slight chance of dropping their quill coupons when killed. But the best ones are the down quill and the Malbatross quill. The coupons for these are dropped by, you guessed it, Moose Goose and Malbatross. As far as I can tell from the game code, these 2 tackles are equally powerful, with a massive range and high accuracy of casts. Eventually you will want to get a hold of these if you plan to fish like a pro, but I'd recommend upgrading your lures first just to ensure that the fish will actually bite. Now, while you're fishing, you can store your catch inside a tin fishing bin. This thing can be prototyped at a think tank and placed on any boat. It is a 12-slot storage box used to keep fish alive and will actually restore their freshness over time at 1/3 of their regular spoilage rate. I consider it an extremely cheap food storage solution and a must-have for any fishing trip. Now, let's face it, the last thing most of us need in DST is another food source. If you're like me, you're looking at all this and thinking about how much you want to get out there, abduct the largest slimy thing in the ocean, and bring it home for all your captive fans to admire. Well, Clay has anticipated that most of us would be hunting for sports, and added a couple of quality life craftables to the update. The pocket scale can be prototyped at a science machine and used to weigh your fish before adding it to your trophy collection. Each scale has 100 uses. Once you find your slimy dream fish, you can stick it into a fish scale-o-matic. This exorbitant display case can be prototyped at an alchemy engine and will hold any one fish, proudly displaying its weight for all the world to gawk at. If you find a heavier catch, you can swap it in at any time, but if you want to move your big boy fish to another container, you will have to hammer the whole thing down to get him back. Now, if you enjoy the thrill of the catch but don't want to brave the high seas, fear not. You can still fish out of ponds on the surface, which will now pop out freshwater fish. These little fellas can be propped up in your trophy room next to your ocean fish, or murdered into a fish morsel. This is actually terrible for Wirt, who can no longer stack the fish needed for her to craft the merm houses. Plan to build a few tin bins on a boat near your ponds to store fish until you can use them in crafting. In addition to the many fish you can expect to find in the ocean, there are 2 other brand new mobs you will occasionally encounter. Skitter squids will pop out at dusk and waste no time in terrorizing the local guppy schools. If you aggro one, they will attack with a targeted inksplosion, which actually completely obscures your view, and a spin attack that can hit up to 3 times for a total of 20 damage. They have 170 health and drop monster meat and the occasional light bulb. The narwhale is a neutral mob who seems to spawn randomly in the ocean. If anyone has more info about the spawning mechanics, please let me know because I do not presume to. Anyway, this guy can be befriended with any fish, meat, or eggs, and will follow you around the ocean, occasionally gifting your boat with seeds. You can also betray it like every other friend you've had here. Just know that it has 1,000 health. When attacked, it will dive underneath your boat and poke a nice hole in your hull. If you are quick enough and do 130 damage to the horn, it will break off of the narwhale, who will become neutral once again. Just be sure to have a boat patch handy. You can still proceed to kill it for 4 fish meat if you desire its death that much. The horn can be blown up to 10 times to summon waves in the direction you point. Stick it to that lunar island base by griefing the land bridge with your mighty waves. Kelp can now be used in crockpot recipes and has a 0.5 veggie value. You can find tons of stalks lying around the beach on the lunar island, and these can be planted anywhere in the water. You can also use your boat to nudge the bull kelp plants in the ocean closer to your base for easy access. Now, this change accompanies the addition of 3 new crockpot recipes into the game: seafood gumbo, California roll, and one of my all-time favorite dishes, surf and turf. Shipwreck players rejoice, they are finally here. California roll requires 2 kelp and a total of 1 fish value. It's a super high priority recipe, so filler can be anything, including a twig. Surf and turf requires 1.5 fish and 2.5 meat. This is actually easy to accomplish because fish meat counts for both 1 fish and 1 meat, and fish morsels count for both half a fish and half a meat. Because it has a higher priority than monster lasagna, you can use 2 monster meat for the recipe. Can we say Ruin's superfood? Holy crap! 2 eels and 2 monster meat now cook into 60 healing and 33 sanity. Maybe not a bad idea to prototype a crockpot and a fishing rod before you go ruins diving. Seafood gumbo requires 2.5 fish, but this is actually impossible to make exclusively with ocean fish because you end up making surf and turf with all the meat value added. Which is absolutely better and totally great. Unless it changes, the only recipes I can think of for making this would require at least 1 eel plus any additional 1.5 fish. I don't know, it's weird, probably gonna get reworked. Wirt has had a few adjustments made to her fish relations as a result of now actually having live fish in the game. So she now gains sanity from holding live fish, but loses sanity from holding any fish remains. This includes the meat, the morsels, or the spoiled fish. She also acts as a walking salt box for live fish, keeping them alive in her inventory 4 times longer than the default life expectancy. Malbatross will aggro on players if it gets too many fish stolen from its shoal. If you spot one, best to leave the fish there alone unless you plan on fighting. That's all for this update. Just kidding. Leave it to Clay to drop a major game update just as I'm finishing my guide. Thanks, fam. Here's some more info. For about a day, the mast, anchors, and steering wheels had their kits removed. Those have now been reinstated. Video deleted. Hammering an anchor placed on the boat will now create a leak, much like the tin fishing bin. Live fish can now be cooked in a crockpot. They appear to have the same food values as their murdered version. Warley's fish cordon bleu recipe has been changed. It now requires fish with total value of 1 plus 2 frog legs. This means there can be room for a filler if you use fish meat, and that filler can be anything edible. Freshwater fish will now turn to spoiled fish instead of rot upon death, and the Merm King will drop freshwater fish when killed. For real, this time is the end. Be sure to post in the comments if I missed anything, which I'm sure I have, or if any subsequent updates change any of the information contained here. If you haven't watched yet, be sure to check out my very short video covering the basic technique of using the sea fishing rod and how to prevent the feisty fish from stealing all your hard-earned floats. I hope you found this guide useful. Please like and subscribe if you want to see more Don't Starve gameplay videos and guides in the future. See you next time.